Hi again. Here we are to continue talking about React. And in the last video, I just gave kind of just a little overview of this project, the starter project, and kind of tried to explain JSX and components, just to a simple level. The best way to learn this is to make some things and see how they work and kind of modify them, right? So let's talk about making a new component here. We'll add our own component, and then we can talk about some of the rules for writing JSX inside your components, right? So, I've got a title component here. Maybe we should make some kind of component that does something else. So I'm going to make a simple component, and we'll make a hello component, right? So a component is defined with a function. Okay, and any way that you can define a function in JavaScript, you can use to define a component. Okay, I'm going to use this method, right? And this is the name of my component. As a general rule, our component always starts with an uppercase letter. Okay, and that's kind of what separates the components we create from the tag names that are the standard HTML tags, right? Because you remember that the components can also be rendered like tags. Okay, so there's a component. The next thing is a simple component like this is just a function, but the function needs to take this variable props. Okay, so we always have a variable here named props. You can name this anything you like, but it's kind of the standard that it's props, and all the documentation you'll read always refers to this props variable, right? So we put it here, and we'll just call it props like everyone else. Okay. So the other thing is a simple component needs to return JSX. Okay, so you're going to put some JSX here. Now, JSX can be anything you want, but remember, it's like HTML tags written in your JavaScript. So let's say I want to return something simple here. I'll just return let's return an H2, and it'll say hello world. Okay, there we go. So there's our simple component. Okay, so now how do we want to render this component? Okay, so remember our component's called hello, and in order for us to display the component, what we would do is we would say hello like this, right? So there's how we're going to render this component. We're not going to render it here though. What we're going to do is we're going to render it down here in the DOM with our render method. So we have to have a top level component. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put our component inside the div here, and we'll just say hello. So I'll save that and then refresh my page, and you can see it says hello world here. Okay, so let's imagine we wanted to modify our component so that it could say anything, right? So this is where props comes in. So props is always a JavaScript object, okay? And it makes, properties available to your component. And in general, you should think about props as information that determines like how the component will display itself, okay? So what we can do is we can say props dot, and then let's say we have a message that we want to display in our hello component, okay? So if props was an object, maybe it looked like this. I'll put a comment here. Maybe it was like var props equals a JavaScript object with a message property equal to some message like, like this. Then, we could access the message property with the dot. Okay. Now here's one thing. Okay. When you're inside of JSX, like a JSX tag, right, in your JavaScript here, if you want to render JavaScript directly, then you have to put it inside the curly braces like this. Okay, now you saw before, like if I don't have the curly braces, it just renders the text directly, right? So if I do this and I refresh, you can see it says props.message, right? But if I put the curly braces around it, I'll save and then I'll refresh the browser here. You can see that it renders. Oh wait, I forgot one step. Sorry about that. Right, I wrote the object up here, but this actually doesn't put anything into our props. Right, our props is empty. So actually, it's rendering correctly because this is nothing, right? So in order to add the message to props so it renders here, what we'll do is we'll go back down to where our component is going to, is written. And then what we'll do is we'll use an attribute. So we'll say message is, right, foobar. So if you remember in HTML, tags can have attributes. Attributes are always in the form of name equals value, okay? And these attributes here in React components get added as properties of the props object. So when this component is created, React generates a props object, passes it into the component, and it gets the attribute name and makes an object or a key value on the object, and then gives the value of that key to the or a value from the attribute to the key, right? Okay, so we'll save that and then we'll test it again in our browser here. Oh, and then it says foobar, right? Okay, now why is this cool? Well, essentially, we've created one component, right? And my component's super simple, right? But, if it did a lot of stuff, this could start saving us time, because now I can use the component again and I can have it display any message that I want. So maybe I want to make the component say hello world, and then use the hello component to also say foobar or whatever I'm doing, right? So I'll refresh it again, and you can see I've used the component twice, but I've configured the component differently each time I've used it. And that's kind of the key thing to components, okay? You want to create your components and think of them as reusable blocks of code, right? And every time you're going to reuse them, you're going to configure their props by setting attributes on the component here, right? And then our component definition up here will take in those attributes in the props variable, and you can use the values from the attributes to configure your component, okay? So, and remember, anytime you have JavaScript that you want to render within the JSX elements, it has to be wrapped in the curly braces, okay? So anyway, thanks for watching, and then I hope that that was informative.